gentlemen, rule number one regarding this topic, and since Sam is still eager in thought about the years, once I say the words good morning, good afternoon, good evening the next time, all decision making should be terminated and we should stick with the 5 rules we've got. So for Sam, I'll count down from 5 to cease, and then he's got his chance to decide the 5 levels or the 5 years he wants. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's it. Yep. Right then, ladies and gentlemen, now that Sam's scratching his head moment's over and done with, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be, and welcome to yet another episode of the Directed by Dean podcast. I am joined, as always, by the man who has probably spent more time scratching his head in the last week than I've spent scratching my head today, Sam Tarshaw.
Hello, Dean. Hello, viewers. Hello, Joe.
Hello.
And as always, we have Final Cut's resident Padre, the man who could actually replace a priest in the church if he wanted, Trevor.
Oh, Dean, you flatter me so much. Hello, everybody. So good to see you all again.
All I'm going to say is, mate, first time we had a chat, and I felt enormous weight off my shoulders. So, although saying that, I'm pretty sure I didn't say, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I've sinned a lot."
Well, you know what's actually funny about that? One of my prayers at the beginning of this year was, I'm like, I prayed to God and I said, I feel like I can be a part of a podcast. I said, you know what, God, give me a podcast. Give me something. This was at the beginning of the year. Then, sure enough, along the summer, I get contacted by a complete stranger who I now call a good friend named Dean, who contacted me about being in his podcast. One thing led to another, led to a couple episodes of what we are now doing, the Directed by Dean podcast. So, Dean, you are an answered prayer, and I thank God for you every day.
Bless you, mate. Just before we begin the news, I did actually see this on YouTube this morning. It was the 1-year anniversary of Jason David Frank's death.
Yes.
So I didn't realise that until this morning. I haven't put it in the news, but I thought it was important.
1 year. I can't believe how fast that went by.
I can't believe it. I actually mentioned that because Aaron Schonke actually put a video on Back in the Sun about his JDF memories. I haven't watched it yet, but I will at some point. So I know I've started off quite sad, gentlemen, and the news is gonna end a bit sadder. But until then, we have a bit of happy news. I actually found this out literally when I was watching Three Soul movies. Well, when I say watching, I was listening because I was doing research for today. Shazam 2. This is if you have Sky Cinema or Now TV in the UK. Shazam 2 is streaming from December 15th, so just under a month, because today is actually the 20th of November. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse streams on the 22nd. Super Mario Brothers, which is a nice treat, actually streams on Christmas Day. So I know what my Christmas is going to incur. Go and see the in-laws, have a lovely Christmas dinner, and then have a cup of tea, maybe a beer, watching Super Mario Brothers. And for those Fast 10 fans that haven't watched it in cinema but do have Sky Cinema or Now TV, it's coming in January. Haven't got a date yet, but more than likely it will be middle of January for a guess.
I finally saw that movie. It was, just exactly what I expected, which is, entertaining, but of quality, no, not really.
I guess that's just how it is now. To be honest with you, once you've been into outer space, you can't really beat it.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that is I joked about that 10 years before that movie came out. I said, I guarantee you we're going to see them in space one day. And then after the 9th one came out, I got a phone call. They said, you were right. I'm like, of course I am. About what? They said they finally went to space in Fast and the Furious. And I started laughing. I could not believe they actually did that. And then sure enough, I watched Tyrese and Ludacris in space driving a car. Could not believe my eyes.
I do enjoy it, but I think unfortunately all Fast 10 is just a preview for the next 2 that come along. Just like part 2 will just be a prelude to the Avengers Endgame event. That will be Fast and Furious, whatever. We decide to call it Fast 10 Part 3, Fast 12, whatever it's going to be.
I think it's going to be Fast 10 Part 3.
Even though Fast 13 would be a lot better, or Fast 12 would be a lot better.
It would, but it's kind of like how they had Rambo First Blood as the sequel, and then
Yeah.
they had Rambo First Blood Part Two, which was technically
Yeah.
the third movie. So those titles didn't make sense. I would, whenever I talk to Sly, I want to ask him about that.
Please do. Actually, Sam, there's a bit of news that might concern your reviewing schedule or your critic schedule. There's a Netflix movie which has been called one of the most terrifying movies ever made.
Oh, there you go.
It's called Fall. It centers on two best friends, Becky and Hunter, played by Grace Caroline Curry and Virginia Gardner. The moral of the story is Becky's husband died in a climbing accident a year previously. They climbed 2,000 feet to the top of a radio tower to scatter her hubby's ashes, because obviously he's died. But unfortunately, as you would expect, disaster hits. They're stranded on top of the radio tower, no way down, no supplies, phones don't work, and every possible idea of escape results in certain death.
Just up Sam's alley.
Yeah, pretty much. I've actually got some. I won't say some reviews of it, but there's actually some reaction to it. Film fans have took to X, formerly known as Twitter, talk about their horrifying viewing experience. They range from Fall on Netflix is one of the most terrifying movies I've seen in my entire life, and I love horror. No blood, no gore, just horrific anxiety throughout watching these two girls try and survive. It's just awful. A one time only, as my palms are now sweating. That's one. The other one is, I've always found it difficult to describe my random fear/anxiety of heights, tall objects and large open spaces from above. Fall on Netflix is basically it. My hands were sweaty and my vertigo kicked in just watching it.
Damn.
So
yeah,
sounds like it's worth a watch.
I think you should, mate. And if you do end up liking it, you're also in luck, because it's about to become a franchise as well, as two sequels have been greenlit with new characters and old characters appearing. And apparently Fall 2 will begin filming next June.
Nice, finally.
Believe me, boys, there's only three things I really want to watch tonight, which is I want to start watching American Horror Story with Kim Kardashian, just to see how good of an actress she is.
Oh, gosh.
This and The Killer with Michael Fassbender. 2 on Netflix, 1 on Disney+. So I'm sort of undecided about what to watch yet. I'm tempted to wait for Sam's review of it first.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe see what Sam says. He might have a better recommendation for you.
I'll do that. Now, obviously, gentlemen, we know about this because the producer put it in our group chat earlier this week. Netflix has cancelled 5 shows, which we sort of had a feeling that they would cancel some things, because obviously they're having to make decisions about properties that are already here. Netflix are the king or queen, or both of doing that. They've gone and cancelled 5 shows, ranging from Matthew McConaughey's Agent Elvis, Captain Fall, Kim Cattrall's Glamorous, which I have watched, which I am not a big fan of, Farzar, and the most controversial choice, which is Ben Barnes' Shadow and Bone.
And I find it interesting that after the strike, when things are supposed to move forward, they decide to cancel stuff.
I know, I was kind of like, well, I find that a bit funny. We've had an actress, but then again, with Netflix, it's not really, it's quite common, because they do cancel a lot of series 2 seasons in. Altered Carbon, for instance, that had a great first season, not so much a great second season, and then they just cancelled it without warning.
Yeah, it's like, and it makes you wonder, because we're already all subscribing to Netflix, so it's kind of like, it's like, what do they got to lose by taking the risk of doing a 3rd season of an already established show? Because they could just improve it and make it better. Because think about it, and this is actually something I thought about recently. If Seinfeld were to come out, like say Netflix existed back in the 90s and Seinfeld came out, they would have canceled Seinfeld after 1 season.
Yeah.
Because season 1 didn't do that well. Season 2 didn't even do that well. It wasn't until season 3, when Larry David was assuming a lot more creative control, that the show took off and became one of the greatest sitcoms today. So you kind of got to wonder, with Netflix canceling all these shows early on, I believe they're halting momentum of what could be potentially really amazing and fantastic TV series. But again, because we live in a society where we're impatient and we need things yesterday, and we don't want to wait for it until tomorrow, if something doesn't perform immediately well first season, they're not going to go back to the drawing board, see what they can do to improve for a second season. They're just going to cancel it and say, all right, let's see what we can do. So you got to figure how many great, phenomenal shows are they taking away?
Yeah. The fans are criticising the decisions about Shadow and Bone, actually, because there was quite a big fan base that wanted the third season. The comments range from, do not for any reason ever fall in love with a Netflix TV show. They kill them at the first chance they have to. Why make shows if you're not going to finish them? The best show on the platform to, oh man, I was looking forward to that conclusion. Oh, well.
Yeah, and that's the thing you got to wonder. Like, Netflix is losing the trust of the audience because you're having your subscribers fall in love with these shows. These shows are passing some kind of test because they're getting made. And even as so far as to go with some, like in some cases, 2 seasons, then they stop. So now, with Netflix canceling 5 established shows, they're gonna lose the trust of their audience, and then they're gonna exactly what that one member is saying, like, let's not watch a Netflix show. Then you're gonna start losing subscribers. Then you flash forward to 5-10 years down the line, Netflix isn't, and I'm predicting this now because I know for damn sure I'm gonna be right. Netflix is going to be scratching their head saying, where do we go wrong? We started streaming. How do we go wrong? Because they're killing shows before they have a chance to flourish. And it's happened so many times.
Yeah.
And this is just couldn't be more of a prime example of that.
I think the other thing is Netflix might have Drive to Survive as far as F1 goes, but Apple's planning a bid where Drive to Survive will stay on there, but any future content, is going straight to Apple if they get the what do you call it? If they actually get the rights with the $2 billion offer. But to be honest with you, the $2 billion offer from Apple is very generous. And as far as F1 goes, if I was Liberty Media, I'd take that because the $2 billion they get will be a lot more than they could get from, say, Sky for the coverage. And $2 billion is, to be honest with you, even when I saw the report when I first reported that, there was a report that said $2 billion is a lot more than they could get from every single outlet in the world.
Yeah, $2 billion's it's not a little. Let's put it that way.
We'll put it this way: with all the money that Apple get off selling iPhones, iPads, all that, and the fact that I'll say Apple TV is probably still the lowest priced out of all the streaming services. I mean, I think it's about $6.99, £7 now. And obviously, if you buy anything up that begins with an I and you have it brand new, you get free Apple TV for a year as well. So it's not as if they haven't given incentive to actually buy new technology every single year. I actually think that Netflix is getting pretty desperate because Netflix will literally have a tie-in with everyone. I mean, over here, for instance, they've had a tie-in with Sky where you can literally, Sky pays for your Netflix every single month. I know a lot of other people have offers. I mean, Disney has an offer with Samsung, I think it is. But at the same time, they're not desperate. I think Netflix is getting to the point where it's desperate. And like you said,
Netflix is because it's like we're talking about, they're losing trust. Like I'm sure it's never going to happen because the show is phenomenal. But if that'd be like them saying Stranger Things season 5 has been canceled for no reason. It would never happen because that's, I think, the most popular Netflix show. But they're canceling so much of their own exclusive content. And like we were talking about on a previous episode, all these other streaming platforms are studios with established franchises that can build upon that. Netflix is its own original one and has nothing except for their own original content. They're doing a decent job. Like Schwarzenegger partnered with them. I thought Fubar was fantastic. So I'm glad that didn't get canceled. The Arnold documentary was incredible. I got done watching the Sylvester Stallone documentary. Oh, and that was magnificent. So in that realm, they're killing it in that, but there's only that can only hold people for so long. They're not like Disney where they're announcing new Star Wars and, like having all the classics that we want to watch again and new upcoming content that we're excited for. Like Netflix is losing that. And I believe we're starting to see right now the beginning of the end of Netflix.
I think we are. And obviously, don't forget that we in England don't have HBO Max yet. We don't have
true
seasons. I don't know how Netflix is performing over in the US, Joe, but I'm going to assume that any DC fan will just go right in a straight fight between Netflix and HBO Max. I'd rather have HBO Max because at least I can see every single Batman cartoon series, movie that's ever been made. When it comes over here, that's exactly what my mindset will be. I mean, I bought Mask of the Phantasm the other week, but if we would have had HBO Max over here and I'd still be paying for it, it would be a case of I don't need to buy the DVD yet because HBO Max is literally the home of everything DC, which you can find every single Batman animated movie on there, which, to be fair, I think is a lot better than some of the movies that there is.
Oh, it is. And I'll go on record. I know we're going to talk about this in a future episode.
Well,
That Mask of the Phantasm is one of, if not the greatest Batman film, animated or live action, to have ever come out.
yeah. I also know why he's right, but I'm not going to say it then because I don't want to give away anything. But as far as we go, as far as we're concerned, I will say if you haven't seen Mask of the Phantasm, you can get it on DVD for about £5 from Amazon. I actually did buy it for £5 from Amazon.
That is a steal. That is a steal for that film.
What isn't a steal is if you want the Blu-ray, £20.
Wow. Well, yeah, because DVDs, they're dying. They're going like they're.
They
I
are
can't remember the last time I bought a DVD.
Yeah. Just before we move on, in fact, it's actually DVDs is actually quite funny because that's actually the next thing I'm going to report on. So, Sam, what's your opinion on Netflix cancelling 5 shows and the future of Netflix?
Well, I do think there is some series on Netflix that should be cancelled, but I think they've chosen the wrong ones because based off the quality of things Netflix putting out, they seem higher quality than most of what Netflix does these days. So I can't understand why they'd remove, some big fan bases just straight from the,
I will say one thing. As far as the movies that made us goes, we did 4 seasons and that was it. There was, I mean, how long has the film industry been going? What, 100 years? Longer than that, maybe?
It started technically, I think, in the late 1800s, and the first, and this is actually an interesting story for those of you that don't know. How film was created was a bet between 2 people, and I learned this a while ago, so I can't remember their names, because these 2 men had a bet, and I'm not sure if Dean or if Sam, if you guys even know this.
I might not know this, but say it anyway, Joe.
So one man thought that when a horse galloped, all of his, like at least one of or 2 of his hooves were on the ground at all times. This other guy's like, I don't know, you're wrong. When the horse gallops, they're airborne for a little bit. They didn't believe him. So what they did was they set up 10 or 20 cameras in a row connected to this wire. So when the horse galloped through, as he tripped the wires, he set off each of those cameras. So they printed the pictures, compiled them together, and they flipped through them rapidly and saw that, yes, that one man was right, that when a horse did gallop, he was in midair, but then they saw that it looked like the horse was moving as they flipped through the pictures super quick. Then when they developed that technology, you had the birth of the first camera, and flash forward to a century later, here we are today.
Also, gentlemen, you might not know this, and I did actually watch this on an Channel 4 documentary. Movie historians actually said that at the turn of the 19th century, something simple that we find simple today, like say a train coming into a station, that was classed as a horror movie.
Oh yeah, it was. The very first horror movie was, I think, by the Méliès brothers. Don't quote me on that. It was by some famous filmmakers in the early 1900s. And the very first horror film was a film of a train approaching the camera, but because nobody knew what it was, everybody in the theater was frightened, thinking a train was coming at them, and they all got up and ran away. And nobody got to see the train, just went right by the camera. Think about how far we've come. I believe that came out in 1902. I'm going off of memory here.
Something like that, yeah. I do know it was seriously black and white, and it was about, I don't know if it was in the late 19th century or very early 20th century. It's one or the other anyway. But yeah, it was really olden days. But let's put it this way, gentlemen. Our combined age doesn't even reach back that far.
Nope.
By a long way. If there was a twin version of me, then maybe we could say, yes, our combined age actually is as long as it was back then. But there's only 3 of us, so no, we've not won that one yet. Actually, you mentioned DVDs, Joe. That's actually quite a good way to enter this next one. And Sam, you'll want to hear this. Chris Nolan has spoken about the dangers of films only being available on streaming platforms. In an interview with the Washington Post, he elaborated on recent comments he made while introducing the screening of his film Oppenheimer, when he urged fans to buy the Blu-ray version in brackets, so no evil streaming service can steal it from you.
Whoa.
But he did say, and I'm actually going to elaborate on what he said. He said the danger I'm talking about with a filmmaker's film just sort of disappearing from streaming one day and then maybe not coming back or not coming back for a long period of time. That's not an intentional conspiracy. That's just a way that with a particularly licensing agreement, the way things are evolving. So it's something worth pointing out because it needs to be fixed, but I'm very confident it will be. Honestly, last bit. There is a danger these days that if things only exist in the streaming version, they do get taken down. They come and go, as do broadcast versions of films. So my films will play HBO, whatever, they'll come and go. In short, but the home video version is the thing that can always be there, so people can always access it. There is a bit more on there, but you get the general gist of it.
Oh no, and I agree with him 100%. That's why if I really do love a film or love a movie or see like a collection of films that I love, I'm still going to buy them because nobody can take that away from me. A problem that we're facing now, people just think, oh, it's convenient. You spend $8 a month, $10 a month for Disney, Amazon, HBO, whatever you have, and that's fine. But what happens when they take it away?
Yeah.
Or what happens if they lose the rights and nobody gets the rights? Suddenly you want to watch something and you can't. That's why if I love something, I will support in any way I can. Buy the Blu-ray. I have the Sopranos collection. I have the Batman animated series collection. I have the Criterion collection of the Bruce Lee movies, The Princess Bride. I have the entire Infinity Saga, the whole collection, because these are just films I love. And yeah, I can watch them on Disney Plus right now, but what happens if there's some big global internet outage?
Yeah.
I still have my Blu-rays.
Yeah. Just to elaborate, and I'm not sure if my collection will beat yours, but I had a lot of DVDs and Blu-rays before streaming came along. Alien Quadrilogy, first 3 Terminator films, but I don't really tend to watch Rise of the Machines that much. 6 Star Wars movies, Van Helsing. Honestly, I've got so many I can't even remember half of them. But I will say Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, Death Proof, Planet Terror is in my collection as well.
I got Kill Bill also. Yep, phenomenal films.
Just trying to think. Well, honestly, there is a lot. I've got a load of Batman animated movies like Assault on Arkham, like I said, Mask of Phantasm. I haven't got Batman Return of the Joker yet, but that will always have a special place in my heart.
Oh, that film. Beautiful. Magnificent.
Oh, speaking of which, funny enough, if anybody actually wants to buy Oppenheimer, it's actually released on more so Blu-ray than digital on November 21st, which is actually today when this actually goes up. So there you go.
Hey,
Sam.
Nice.
So there you are, Sam. Before you go to college in the morning, you can go and buy Oppenheimer if you want.
There you go, Sam.
Oh yeah, I'll just drive off about 20 miles to do
that.
Worth it.
It is worth it. Or either that or order it off Amazon, mate, and get it in back 3 days.
Yeah, that's probably a better idea.
Particularly with Black Friday on the horizon. Also, one last thing. Nolan also recently revealed that he sneaked his mother, his wife, and 3 of his kids into the back of an IMAX theater in New York on the opening night of the film. I wonder if anyone actually went to him and went, yeah, I'm sorry, you're not going through this way. And he just looked at them like, does this guy not know who I am? My movie is playing in your auditorium.
Wow.
But he did actually say it was a remarkable experience to be there. Every seat was filled and the focus on what was happening on screen was so strong. That level of engagement was something that I'd never really felt before. Real attention was being paid. So there you are, gracious and humble, as I always thought he was. Oh, by the way, gentlemen, it's not all movie news, but it is movie related. So speaking of movie related, congratulations to actor and Blake Lively's bitch, Ryan Reynolds, who was awarded the Order of British Columbia in a private ceremony in Canada last week. The award is the highest form of recognition the Canadian province of British Columbia can bestow on its citizens and recognises those who have gone above and beyond. the documentary Welcome to Wrexham did want to film, but Ryan said no. He's gone. They wanted to come here, but I said no. He also confirmed that series 3 of the show is currently shooting now and will be out in April. I have been watching season 2, and I won't say it's a lot better than the first year, because obviously there are a lot of sequels that are and a lot of sequels that aren't. But there's a lot more at stake this year, particularly when you watch the first episode, when you realize or know from bits and bobs just how much money that Reynolds and McElhenney have lost since they bought it. But that is actually that's actually something for another day, and someone who's a finance wizard, because that's not really my territory. By the way, in typical Reynolds fashion, he posted on Instagram about the award he was presented with. I'm not going to say all of it because it would take too long. But in short, he thanked Vancouver for allowing him to be born in that city. He had to go back on promises he made to many places. He thanked his family, but amazingly, he didn't thank his 4 daughters and his lovely wife, Blake Lively, who will forever have his testicles in her purse.
Interesting.
Yeah. But we just know, because she owns him. Even when he tries to prank her, she always gets her own back.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. So Ridley Scott's new movie Napoleon is out, starring Vanessa Kirby and Joaquin Phoenix. So I thought I'd bring something Napoleon-esque into the news. One of Napoleon's hats went to auction last week. The estimated price was €600,000, or Sam, in our money, just over £500,000. Would you two like to have a guess how much it sold for?
I'm going to guess $2.3 million.
Which is, how much is that in Dosh, mate?
Hold on, let me look it up
right. 1.7 million.
I think it's a bit more than that, because it's not how it used to be in the olden days, where £1 got you $1.5. I think it's more like £1 now is kind of like $1.15 or something like that.
So it's a €2,100,000.
2.1. Oh, go on then, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Bear in mind, this is a piece of history.
Well, I'd have said it's about £4.8 million.
To be honest with you, the guy who actually sold it would have loved to have taken 4.8, but Joe's actually the closest.
Whoa.
It sold at €1.9 million or 1.69 million, which is a world record for a Napoleon hat, according to Osnet, the auction house who sold it.
Look at Napoleon breaking records.
Yep. It was part of a collection of Napoleon memorabilia belonging to industrious, I'm going to butcher his name, but I do apologize if I do, Jean-Louis Nuizes, who also included a silver plate looted from his carriage after his defeat at Waterloo, silver toothbrush, and a wooden vanity case. But the hat was considered to be the centerpiece of the collection. The reason why it was so special is because I don't know if anyone's ever seen what the hats that they used to wear, but it was a bicorn hat. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it that right. But Napoleon used to wear his hat sideways, so the tips would be in line with his shoulders rather than how they used to wear it in the olden days, like a cap. And he always used to wear them like that, so it made it easier for him to spot the military general in combat. And according to the auctioneers, the hat in question was recovered by Colonel Pierre Ballon, a quartermaster under Napoleon and one of his military comrades. There is only 20 authentic Napoleon hats in the world. 15 are in museums, and 5, including that one, are in collectors' hands. And is quoted by the head of an auction house as the Holy Grail of Napoleon hats.
Well, damn, I never thought. I guess that person knows his hats.
Yeah, they must do. Also, gentlemen, what do we like for whiskey? How do we like whiskey?
I don't.
You don't?
No, I'm more of a Vino Rosso kind of guy.
Well, you might change your mind after you hear this. There's a bottle of whiskey which has been described as the most sought after in the world. It went on auction. The estimate was between £750,000 and £1.2 million.
What?
Yep. I'll explain what it is in a minute. So how much do you two think it went for at auction?
Oh boy. The heck's in this whiskey then? Oh man. Let's go with I'm gonna go with my original 2.3 million.
2.3. What about you, Sam?
I'm going 7.5.
Oh my gosh.
Again,
Sam loves his whiskey.
He does love his whiskey. Again, Joe is correct. It actually sold for a record £2.1 million at auction.
Oh, damn. I think I was right then because 2.3 million US is 2.1 million euro. So
It's
suck
not
it,
all,
Sam.
yeah. It's not the actual 2.1 million. What it is, the actual sale price was 1.75 million, but the buyer's premium makes up the rest of it. So the premium is actually something, it's over 400,000. So
I'll
it's
take it.
actually, yeah. Just so you know, the whiskey is I hope I'm pronouncing this right, is a Macallan Adami 1926. And it makes it the most that anyone has ever paid for a bottle of wine or spirits in an auction house.
Damn.
40 bottles of whiskey were produced in 1986 and had been aged in sherry casks for 60 years.
Well, that'll do it.
Yeah, 12 of the bottles, including the one sold on Saturday, had labels designed by Italian artist Valerio Adami and is the first to have been reconditioned by the distillery before it went to auction, which included replacing the cork and applying fresh glue to the corner of the label. The previous auction record was actually held by a bottle of Macallan Adami from the same cask, which went for 1.5 million. By the way, gentlemen, if you actually want to know what it tastes like, Macallan's master whiskey maker, Kirsten Campbell, said, I had notes of rich dark fruits, black cherry compote alongside sticky dates, followed by intense sweet antique oak. So if you know anyone who's just bought a $2 million bottle of whiskey, if they open it, I'd recommend you try it.
Well, I would have to under sheer principle. I actually tried my Nona loves scotch. I'm not a big scotch drinker. I tried a shot of Johnny Walker Blue that was in space just because it was in space.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it. I don't get it. I don't get the hype.
I'll be honest, I've had tequila and I don't mind it. I generally don't mind it. I've had Jack Daniels. Tequila. I don't mind that, but I'd rather have Tennessee whiskey because if you have plain Jack Daniels, the entire strength of it still remains with you, whereas the Tennessee honey actually sort of soothes it. So it's kind of like you can drink loads without your mouth feeling it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen, there is one more foodie item, and then that'll be because I'm a bit of a foodie. There's been a new Guinness World Record for the strongest chili ever made.
Ooh.
So I'll give you a little bit of a comparison in case you're not sure how bad it is. Cayenne pepper, which is basically sold everywhere and you can add into food, is 50,000 on the Scoville scale. Basically, that measures how hot your chilies are. Thai pepper, which is just about in everything Thai that you can have, is 100,000. A habanero pepper ranges from 100,000 to 300,000, which you can find in the hottest Indian and one of the hottest curries in the world, which is a fowl curry.
Oh, boy.
Which is regarded to be hotter than a vindaloo. The previous record holder was the Carolina Reaper at 1.64 million. The new record holder is actually Pepper X, which comes in at 2.69 units on the Scoville scale.
See, I like my spice.
But not.
But I think, no. I've actually had, I forgot what this is called, but it's like this chip that's made with like ghost peppers.
Mm-hmm.
I almost ate a whole chip, but someone broke me off a little tiny piece. They said, no, try this. I said, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
At first, it wasn't bad. After I swallowed and after like 10 seconds, oh my gosh, the heat from that was insane and it didn't stop, all from a little piece of this chip. So I cannot imagine what that chili is like.
I actually prepared for that, sir, because I've actually got the side effects of what the owner actually said. If anyone has to worry about if it's going in your food, it can't be sold because you can't buy the pods and seeds.
That's good.
But the guy who created it is only one of 5 people who's eaten an entire Pepper X. He's described the side effects as, I quote, I was feeling the heat for 3.5 hours, followed by cramps. I was laid out flat on a marble wall for about an hour, groaning in pain.
Whoa.
Yeah. So obviously, if it's a really hot pepper, assume your eyes will water. You can't see where you're going. You probably can't feel anything in your upper face or your mouth, actually. There is a way to actually taste it, but it will be sold through the hot sauces. It's actually,
I'm good. I'm good.
But there's no list that came with it, which is a bit sad. But yeah. So congratulations to what's his name? To Ed Curry, who actually knows the hottest and the second hottest peppers in the world. I'll be honest, boys. I'm going to end the news on a sad note. You two know what it is because I told you what it was a couple of hours ago. I'll be honest. I really struggled knowing what to write. And then when I did write it and I sent you, I was feeling quite emotional just because of it. Um, a lot of people may or may not know this, but what my favorite singer Taylor Swift is touring in Brazil in the moment, and Friday night, a young fan lost her life, which sorry boys,
It's tragic.
yeah.
It's just
Apparently,
tragic.
according to a Brazil, the only thing is, I will explain this. Brazil's in the middle of a heat wave right now. We're talking serious red alerts being issued, which is basically a serious danger to health across the country. Rio itself on the actual day was about 40 degrees, which was, I imagine, probably hotter than Texas and Vegas combined. It's not been, I got to say, it's not just been limited to the unfortunate lady who passed away. Taylor herself has been seen struggling for grasping for breath.
So just for us Americans out there, 40 degrees Celsius is 104 degrees Fahrenheit. That is hot.
Yeah, that's probably hotter than an hour in Death Valley.
It's hot. Like in America here, when it's like 85 degrees and humid, you're dripping with sweat.
Yeah, and her concerts have been happening at night, so you can imagine
when it's supposed to be relatively cooler.
Yeah. But yeah, Taylor has actually been seen throwing bottles of water in. She's literally stopped her songs to let everyone try and get some water. Unfortunately, I don't know if you two know this, Joe. You might know this, but the rules are for concerts that you're not allowed to bring your own food and drink in, which I still do.
Oh, I do too. It depends on the arena. Like when I saw the stadium tour 2 years ago, and it was actually last year. When I saw it last year, they did allow you to bring outside food and drink, but the rules were strict. It had to be a clear bag, and if it wasn't, you couldn't bring anything in.
Yeah.
So it's just ridiculous because that rule is, I mean, I get it for safety as well, but we have metal detectors for that. That rule is literally mostly only established for greed. So you're forced to buy an $8 to $10 bottle of water instead of bringing in your own. And it makes me so mad because this all could have been avoided if we didn't prioritize greed. And I mean, in this case, this was Brazil and it was their rules, but in America, we ain't no better. We'll do anything we can to make an extra couple bucks.
I'm sure I'm sure Britain's just as bad, but the only difference is I'm not digging at anything, but there are those who just take it regardless. I mean, I've took food and drinking regardless for years because I don't want to pay ridiculous prices. I do feel sorry though for anyone in Brazil who does have to face this, but at the same time, there should come a point where greed is second just to human survival. I mean, the lady who was killed, her dad is demanding answers, and he wants someone's head, as I would, as you would, as Sam would. But the question is, who's going to take the fall for it? And I don't think anyone would.
It should be whoever is in charge of that rule of you can't bring in outside liquid. And I think there should be a clarity to that to say the only outside liquid you can either bring is either a bottle of water or do the same rules that the airport does. You can bring an empty bottle, an empty container, but it just can't be full of liquid. If you're worried about safety, because I get it, we have to prioritize safety as well. Bring an empty container and then go to a water fountain over there and fill it up.
Yeah, that's fine. I know England over here has been really bad with letting stuff in since the Manchester bombing a few years ago. I know that we over here have been, I'll say, in overdrive regarding making sure that doesn't happen. But at the same time, I know we don't have extreme heat over here that much. We barely have it 4 months of the year. But I think for hotter places in the world, I mean, Las Vegas in the summertime can be quite hot. I know, obviously, you have places like Death Valley.
It's nuts. I was in Arizona one summer seeing some family. It felt like when I opened the door to step out of a car, it felt like I literally was walking into an oven. I was breathing air, but I was getting no oxygen. I also have asthma too, so I'm even more susceptible to that. So I can only fathom an 104 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Celsius. And you're not just standing in there. Keep in mind, you're exerting so much energy because you're jumping up and down to the music, you're singing, and you don't even realize how tired and how exhausted and how dehydrated you are because
Yeah.
you're caught up in the endorphins. And it was probably that exact case where this fan, I mean, if you're seeing one of your idols perform, of course, there's like almost no greater feeling. So water was like probably a second thought. And all everybody's thinking is, I'm not going to miss the next song. I'm going to stay right here. So good on Taylor Swift for stopping to let people drink. But if you have 30, 40,000 people in a stadium,
if I may give you the exact number, I believe it's 60,000.
60,000. You have 60,000 people. She stops to get water. Still, as a fan, you're like, no, I'm not going to miss 1 second of this. I'm staying right here. You have like thousands of people flooding to get water when all you had to do and all you have to do going forward is allow people to bring in their own outside bottles. And if safety is your concern, I get it. Allow them to bring the empty bottles or containers, and then it's up to them at that point to fill it up. Because then at that point, you can't argue with that. If it's like, well, we allowed them to bring in their own containers, she just chose to not drink water. That's fine. But the fact that they wouldn't allow it, that's the issue, is that they would not allow you to bring water. That's the main issue, because then she would have been in control of water consumption. Yeah. She would have been at fault, case closed. But that's not the case.
No.
And it's sad because you think a concert, one of the best days of your life, one of the best times of your life to create a memory, ends up being for this woman's friends, for her family, one of the worst days of their life.
I will say one thing. I have actually been to a Taylor concert, and it has been the best night of my life. So I will actually endorse what Joe said. I will say that from as far as other concerts go in Brazil, I believe Rio's football stadium, I forget where they were playing, but they did allow water stations all over the place. But I don't want to say too much about it, mate, but the only thing I will say is, obviously, us three and the producers send the condolences to the family of that young lady. And obviously, as long as Taylor's in Brazil and as long as this heat wave goes on, please drink plenty and please take care of yourselves. I will say one thing. Taylor she wrote something on Instagram, and apparently from what I've heard from other news outlets, that every time she thinks about talking about it, she can't do it. It's actually crushed her as a person.
Yeah, because imagine, like, as an artist, as a professional, this is one of your diehard fans that died literally to see you. I can only fathom what's going through her mind. So, yeah, just my heart and prayers are with any and everybody involved. Loss on any scale is never easy. Especially, it's just even more sad because this loss could have been prevented. Also, I mean, think about it this way. It's over 100 degrees. As just a safety concern, have water stations set up, every couple feet. Yes, it's a hassle, but what it will do is prevent what exactly happened. It'll prevent somebody from dying from, sadly, what this lady died of. Just so sad.
Right then, chaps. Obviously, I'm going to end it with everyone in Brazil, please take care of yourselves, drink plenty, get in the shade when you can. And I'm going to leave it on that because I've done my bit and it's now not up to me to do the rest of this. It's actually Sam's job because he's actually picked the topic this week. So Sam, the stage is all yours.
So I decided for the topic this week and I gave the boys a few days' notice.
You did?
But I want to know, what did they think was the best year for movies as a whole? What year was it that had the best films overall compared to every other year? So I asked them to compile lists, and I believe, have we all got 5 years each?
I've got 5 years. I literally looked at every single, I'm going to say how I did it now. I literally went on IMDb by years from 1929 to 2017. I think their actual pages. Had a look at every year, what movies in, let's say, the 5, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 year top movies that year went. And then if I saw more than 5 that I liked, I instantly went to have a look at what was on the rest of the year. And I'm not quite sure if Sam wants me to say what years I want yet, but my decision for these five, and more importantly, the best year of movies as a whole, was easy. I literally, as soon as I saw this year that I've picked, as soon as I saw the first 10 movies on that list of that year, I was like, I've got to say, this is my favorite year. I just cannot say
Really?
the contrary.
I've clearly found it a lot harder for these years than you. And how did you come to your selection, Joe?
So it's so tough. As I wish you gave me like which decade was the best, that would have been a lot easier. I did it through cultural impact, how it affected the films that followed, um, how they inspired the next generation, and what it did for film as a medium.
I mean, that's a good way to look at it. I did it in a similar way to Dean, but I actually went down Letterboxd rankings instead of IMDb, just because I feel more familiar with that.
Yeah, fair
And it's got years past 2017. But with that, Dean, would you like to go for your number 5, please?
Hold on a minute. Are we? By the way, Sam, mine's actually just in any old order, but I have actually chosen you. Also, are we doing what we discussed earlier?
As in, we all go for our 5s and then all go for our 4s.
When for a bit of extra suspense, we'd go. We'd see.
You can, yes.
Yeah.
So, should we start with the 60s?
Yep.
So, has anyone here got any years in the 60s?
No.
Do you have any from the 60s?
I do, actually.
You do?
Really? I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
in
shocked.
the 60s, because I had to learn about this actor for so long, and this film was very impactful and had a huge, huge influence for what followed. So the year is 1962. The title of the film is Birdman of Alcatraz, where Burt Lancaster actually won his first and only Oscar.
Ooh.
Birdman of Alcatraz, such a phenomenal film. You watch it today, you can see its influence in so many films that followed. Burt Lancaster, for many of you who don't know, I know a lot about this man. He's the first actor to be paid over $1 million for a role.
Yeah.
If you've seen like the famous like kissing scene on the beach from like a black and white film, that's him. Forgot which film it is. But this film is one of the greatest films I've ever seen, released in 1962. So, yeah, so you say 60s. That's why I say Birdman of Alcatraz.
Nice.
That's fair enough. If we move on to the 70s next.
No.
I got one. Well, actually, I got a really, really, really good year.
Have you actually? Hold on, just before we go on, can I just say, have you literally just got one from every single decade, from the 60s to the 90s?
Yes and no. Yes and no. But it was tough because 1972, The Godfather 1 came out, and that's, I think, one of the greatest films of all time. But that's not my year choice for this. My choice for the 70s is the year 1977, because two films that are still not only talked about today that had, I think, some of the greatest impact in cinema history were released that year. I'm going to start off in not order of importance, whatever. The first one is Pumping Iron, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. That film not only launched Schwarzenegger, and everybody knows who Arnold Schwarzenegger is, but what that film did that inspired the 80s, that inspired the action star, that inspired not even just films as a whole, but that started the countercultural movement of people going to a gym, working out, and building muscle. Until then, gyms were not a commodity. Gyms were these weird, dark, dungeon-esque places that people would barely go to, except for the Gold Gym that was heavily featured in Venice, California, that I'm blessed to have worked out numerous times. What that film did, there are no words for the impact. You look at bodybuilding now, you look at fitness now, you can all attribute it and go back to Pumping Iron that came out in 1977. Also, a film that came out in 1977 that not only still talked about today, but is one of the most popular films that started this franchise that is still going today, is A New Hope. or as we all know it as Star
Star
Wars
Wars, yeah.
Episode 4. Yep. I know I don't gotta
Oh,
talk
no.
so much about Star Wars. We all know what Star Wars is. Where it started was 1977 in A New Hope. That definitely took off the sci-fi genre. That created one of the most, if not the most popular universe of all time. And when I say it's still coming out, Ahsoka just got done premiering on Disney Plus a couple months back.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually talking about it with a friend of mine. I went hiking yesterday. We were talking about Star Wars the other day. And you still go back and watch A New Hope. It is a phenomenal film. Great story. It lays the greatest foundation, I believe, of all time as far as cinematic universes are concerned. And that impact is still felt today. So that's why when I talk about 1977, Pumping Iron, and Star Wars coming out, the fact that you can take those two that started off at nothing and look at where both not only have ended up, but the inspiration of them both and where it led. That's why I believe 77, one of the greatest years ever in film.
Apologies, chaps. Halloween, I believe, was 1978, not 77, so I do apologise.
Do you have any from the 70s?
Nothing in the 1970s, mate. Nothing in the 1970s.
I'm assuming you're going to have a few from this one, though, Dean. The 1980s.
Only one?
Only one.
You go, Dean.
I also only have one. Do you have any, Joe?
From the 80s?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
I'll tell you
of course.
What it is. I've actually planned this around a debate where it's like, right, show me the proof where your year is the best in movies. So that's sort of what I based it around. So when I will say one thing, 1982 is the year in this. It's not what I consider the greatest year, but since it's not going to be the one that I actually class as the best, I will give you, I've actually wrote down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I've actually got about 25, 26 down here. But I'll just give you a few examples because I don't think you really want me to bore you with everything on down there. 1982 was the year that Star Trek II Wrath of Khan was released.
There you go.
The best Bill Shatner movie that there ever was. Blade Runner was first released. Fast Times at Ridgemont High. E.T. was released here. And just going back on what Joe said about Arnold Schwarzenegger, Conan the Barbarian was released in 82, as was Tron, Tootsie, 48 Hours, Gandhi, and gentlemen, I must admit, there's another reason why I put this year on this list. I do not know if the producer will have to censor the name of this movie, but I instantly saw the name of this movie and I thought, how can I not include this in this? And it's actually a Swedish movie, and it's called Fanny and Alexander.
Is that a Bergman film?
I honestly, I shit everyone not. There is actually a movie out there called Fanny and Alexander. And before any of the snowflakes that listen go, oh no, you can't say that. That's what the name of the movie is called. Oh, I'm not saying it. It's just what IMDb and the guys who made it have forced me to say. Horror movies, I'm not quite sure how you feel about this. House on Sorority Row, which was basically the tail end of when horror was failing as a whole.
You know, Dean, I got to add, so sorry before I forget, to your year of 1982. A very important film, although it's technically a short film, but that inspired so many musicians afterward, and that inspired the music video genre to show that you can make it just more than a music video. Thriller came out in 1982.
It did, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Directed by John Landis, actually.
Yes, it was.
So, horror movies, as I already said, House on Sorority Row, The Entity, Halloween 3, Season of a Witch, which I would have actually put in the flop section had I actually put one in for 82. Slumber Party Massacre, Poltergeist, 82. John Carpenter's The Thing was released in 82. Creepshow, Friday the 13th Part 3, the one where we first see the hockey mask, Wes Craven's Swamp Thing, and 1982 was also the debut year of James Cameron when he debuted Piranha 2.
Hey, look at that.
Yeah. There's not really any flops in it aside from Halloween 3 Season of a Witch, which I don't really like. I can't stand it. That's about it, really, chaps. But yeah, I went through the first 100 movies that IMDb of that year was showing, and that was just a nice little selection. Just wait till we get to two of the other movies that I've actually got. But yeah, Sam, just the one in '82.
It's actually funny, Dean. I thought for this decade we both had the same year, but we actually don't.
So what's your year, Ben?
I think you've gone the same as me.
All right, Sam, let's see. My year is 1989.
I did. Although, chaps, I will say one thing because I did actually make a note of this. I did actually look because what I included, I was going to include 1982, which is the producer's birth year, and my own of 1983. The reason I haven't put 1983 in any of this, despite the fact that you had movies like Scarface, Return of the Jedi was released in this year, John Carpenter's Christine, Sleepaway Camp, which I know Sam likes, Flashdance, the second to last Bond movie of Roger Moore, Octopussy, Cujo from Stephen King, David Cronenberg's Videodrome. But the only thing is, if I said it was one of the best movies of the year, I would somehow have to put up with the fact that when 1983 was also the year that a little sci-fi movie called Crawl, which I announced is getting a reboot earlier I think it was earlier this month or last month, Jaws 3 and the critically panned Superman 3, which is the second or third worst DC movie ever released. I cannot live with myself and put that year forward.
That's fair. Very fair.
And that's my own birth year as well. I'm literally saying that about the year I was born.
Damn, I'm sorry, Dean. Wait until you get to the year I was born, what movies came out.
Go on then, Joe. Hit me with it.
Well, I'm going to say, since we're on the 80s, which is, I think, one of my favorite decades of all time, I chose 1989 for a variety of reasons. Not film-related, but
was it
television series related.
Was it when Taylor Swift was born by any chance?
I don't know that.
She was born in 1989.
Was she really?
Was.
Well, you know what? Other than birthing Taylor Swift and birthing the Swiftie, I believe Seinfeld actually came out in 1989, which, as we all know, is one of the most impactful television series of all time, if not the greatest sitcom of all time. Now going back to the world of film, the Dragon Ball Z Dead Zone movie actually came out in Japan. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was released in 1989.
Absolutely brilliant.
But all those aside, except for Seinfeld, because Seinfeld's impact is phenomenal, the movie that came out in 1989 that I think has the most impactful cinematic presence that we still go back to, that we still quote today, is Batman, which is now coined Batman 89.
Yeah.
Now, you look at superhero genres before Batman 89, you were just talking about it, Dean. Superman 3. What a way to end. like that's the Superman run. When Batman 89 came out, at that point before, it wasn't until The Dark Knight Returns where DC was actually struggling and Batman struggled to find footing because he became campy after the Adam West version.
Yes.
And the popularity wasn't so high. It was DC's choice after The Dark Knight Returns to go a more dark approach. And having Michael Keaton at the time was very controversial because he was a comedic actor. He was in Beetlejuice. And yeah, he was more of a comedic actor, so nobody believed that he could have been Batman. Obviously, the film is a testament to itself. We still say Batman 89 is one of, if not the greatest Batman film of all time. I know I said that with Mask of the Phantasm, but again, you talk about impact. Look at superhero movies before and after Batman 89. Very different. Batman 89 put a stamp on the superhero genre. And in fact, recently, Michael Keaton was in the Flash movie, and a majority of the reason why people saw it, me included, was just to see him as Batman again because he created such an iconic Batman. And that film, all the more inspiring because it inspired the animated series as well to a more darker tone. So that's why I'm choosing 1989 because you can argue that was the year that this entire superhero genre really started to take off, because following Batman 89, as far as I think 1992, like that's the closest to it. You have, of course, a sequel to that movie, but also Batman the Animated Series, which Me and millions of other kids included were glued to our TVs watching it because Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill knocked it out of the park and inspired a whole generation. So that's why 89 is my year.
Okay.
Well, I also had a film in the 80s, and it was actually 1980, which I thought you would have gone with, Joe, to be honest, but I can see why you haven't. Obviously, that year was headlined with The Shining, probably one of the most iconic horror films there's ever been. Obviously, Stanley Kubrick film. Can't go wrong with him.
I don't think Stephen King will appreciate you for that.
Well, he can take it up with me if he wants. You've also got The Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
It's funny because that was almost my choice, just solely based on The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, like I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but I have to respect it. It is a brilliant film.
Empire's brilliant. It's the first time ever where the bad guys win.
You've got some more horror films like Friday the 13th, Cannibal Holocaust. Obviously, two brilliant films in their own right. You've got some funny films like Airplane, and that's probably the first comedy film that I went and watched thinking this is going to be boring. It's from the 80s. I can't see how it's going to have any redeeming qualities, and it was piss. It was brilliant. I don't laugh at comedy films much, but Airplane it just stays in my mind. It's probably top 3 for me comedy wise.
Oh, Airplane's phenomenal.
It really is. You've also got Raging Bull as well, Robert De Niro.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, again, black and white film. It was in an era, of course, where boxing films were quite prominent. Obviously, Rocky had come out. Was it a few years before that?
Rocky 1 was 76. Rocky 2 came out in 79. So, yeah, it came right off the heels of Rocky.
Yeah, but I believe there was some other boxing moves going around at that time as well. And I know I watched a Martin Scorsese interview, and he talked about Raging Bull in it. And it was good to see how I actually came around with going into black and white, thinking all the other good films, even though there's now colour invented.
Funny enough, speaking of Raging Bull, I found out my grandfather, Joseph James Bear I, was actually in the New York Mafia, but he knew Jake LaMotta. He knew him very well.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So my father told me. I never got to meet him. He died before I was born, but little fun fact.
I mean, that's one of the coolest facts you could have brought in, especially while we're
talking
about this. Yeah. Other than that, it's just a pretty iconic year as a whole. Obviously, Friday the 13th branched off into its own franchise. It's also got the Blues Brothers in that
I love the Blues Brothers.
Yeah, so overall, pretty good year, and I thought I'll go for
a good year, yeah.
There was no more for the 80s, was there?
No, I have the man.
Which means we're moving to the 90s. Do you have any, Dean?
I have 2, and one of these 2 years is my choice.
Okay, and then
I'm going to say which year it is, because I probably will win the argument with about 10 of those movies in that year.
All right, I'm going. So there's arguably better years than this, but I'm just going to go with my birth year of 1993 because 93.
Oh my God! What did I say before we came on, boys? What did I say before I came on? I've got 93 as well.
Yes. Okay.
Don't tell me you've got 93, Sam. Please don't say you've got it.
I'm afraid I don't.
No! Oh my God! Oh no!
Well, that's okay. We're 2-1. But Dean, I'll tell you why I chose 93, and then I'll see if some of our reasons coincide. I chose 93 for a variety of reasons. I mean, of course, I was talking about Batman. Mask of the Phantasm came out that year, changed the course of animated features, because before we had the fun, lighthearted Disney movies, so nobody thought animated features can be dark and serious until the Mask of the Phantasm came out. We also had Jurassic Park, which CGI was a new thing back then. I believe it was first released in 91 with Terminator 2, which surprisingly still holds up today. Yeah. But Jurassic Park in 93 was the first time it was taken on that grand scale. Mm-hmm. And obviously that film the impact is felt today. Not only that, one of my favorite Dragon Ball Z movies, The History of Trunks, came out. So as far as animation goes, that's up there. But also 93, a very, very impactful year, which sparked a series that is still out today about, and obviously we just spoke about him earlier. 93 is the debut year of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And as a kid, it was such a good time to be a kid. I mean, you had shows like Batman, Power Rangers, Spider-Man, then Dragon Ball Z coming out. What a time. Also, there was the 1993 film Schindler's List came out, which I believe won the Oscar, which is such a phenomenal film. So that's why I chose 93. Oh, also, on a side note, Miss Doubtfire came out that year, and that's one of my favorite comedies by Robin Williams. May he rest in peace.
It did. I'm going to further elaborate on why I chose it. Obviously, we know about Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Batman: Mask of the Phantasm, Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, wow, that came out that year too.
Yeah, Harrison Ford's The Fugitive. But to be honest with you, this has actually got the year with a lot of movies.
Mm-hmm.
So, True Romance by Quentin Tarantino. I believe it was it Quentin Tarantino. I think it was, wasn't it? Was it Quentin Tarantino?
What film was that?
True Romance.
I'm not too sure.
I'm not sure if it was, but it was probably the movie that year with the biggest all-star cast. Obviously, you had Gary Oldman, Christian Slater, Trisha Arquette. Groundhog Day was this year. Sister Act 2 was in this year. Hocus Pocus was in this year. Obviously, Mrs. Doubtfire was in this year, as Joe's already elaborated to. Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon's Grumpy Old Men.
Oh, nice.
Which I thought Joe might like. Carlito's Way, Addams Family Values. One of my personal favourite movies of the 90s, Demolition Man.
Oh, Demolition Man is phenomenal.
Which got Wesley Snipes the MTV Award for Best Villain, which was absolutely rightfully deserved. What else have we got on here? Oh, yeah, the very first movie I watched at a cinema, actually. That's why I also put this in the list. Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey.
I love Homeward Bound.
And it was all right. Actually, if anybody wants to know who was in it, one of the voices was actually Michael J. Fox.
Wow. Look at that.
There's
Pelican. I know
that. There you go. Learn something new every day. So Pelican Brief, Remains of a Day, Addams Family Values, Sleepless in Seattle, Three Musketeers with Kiefer Sutherland, Indecent Proposal, The Piano, Cliffhanger, Philadelphia, Much Ado About Nothing. One of the only movies where you will see Keanu Reeves actually play a villain, albeit not a very good accented one, I still believe. Cool Runnings was that year, In the Line of Fire, Alive, Hard Target, the porn movie known as Sliver with Sharon Stone. What's Love Got to Do with It? Free Willy, Hot Shots Part 2, Malice, Rising Sun, Wayne's World 2, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, Dave, The Assassin, although on IMDb it's actually classed as The Point of No Return, which is hogwash. The Vanishing, and obviously Batman: Mask of the Phantasm. Flops this year, gentlemen, unfortunately, which is why it's not my favourite year, include Robin Hood Men in Tights, which I love. I do genuinely love that movie. RoboCop 3, because it was the first movie where Peter Weller wasn't playing Alex Murphy. Last Action Hero, which kind of I liked back in the day, but the more I think about it now, it's kind of like, yeah, it has its moments, but it's still not.
I love, and it's funny, I was going to say that movie too. I love that movie because it pokes fun of the action hero.
Yeah.
And I've actually grown to love it more as I've gotten older. But yes, it was a huge flop and a huge blow for Schwarzenegger's ego.
Yeah. Coneheads with Dan Aykroyd. National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon 1, which was a piss take of Lethal Weapon. But unfortunately, gentlemen, the flop that hits harder more than anything else is Bob Hoskins' Super Mario Brothers. By the way, if anyone has never seen that movie, do not watch it. I would literally go on my knees and beg of you not to find that movie ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn.
Although if anyone does want to find it, I'm sure you can find it on Amazon Prime somewhere. So I'm not going to see what my other year of the 90s is, because that is actually my favourite year. And gentlemen, not to be very Jeremy Clarkson-like and soothe my ego, but I could probably win that argument in about 10 movies.
All right, hit us. What is it?
I don't know. That's coming afterwards. I've still got 2 more.
I guess we'll find out later then with that.
Yeah.
My movie from my year for the 90s was actually 96,
Ooh.
which is quite an odd choice, I feel like people would say. However, it's the fact that Scream and how influential it's been on me specifically.
Yeah, Scream is actually one of my favorite horror films of all time. I love that movie. Matthew Illard, one of my favorite actors of all time, absolutely killed it.
I would probably say the best horror villain of all time.
Oh, I think so. He was psychotic. He was so watchable.
Yeah.
And by the way, a little side note, he released a statement saying that he wants to do a rated R sequel to the second Scooby-Doo movie. And Sarah Michelle Gellar, Freddie Prinze Jr., all the other actors joined and they said they would love that. So please give us a rated R Scooby-Doo sequel. I want it so bad. I would love to see that. Quick side note. Sorry about that.
Well, I believe recently Matthew Lillard signed a 3-movie contract with Blumhouse, which it could be Five Nights at Freddy related, but you never know.
He's phenomenal. Deserves all the success coming his way.
Yeah. What else is from 96? Mission Impossible, first of many. Obviously, it went off.
Do I say why? But I don't regard that as a good movie of the 90s.
I mean, you can.
Mission Impossible 2 was way better.
You know, it's actually funny, Dean. A lot of people say Mission Impossible 2 is the worst one.
I know, but it's a John Woo movie, and I love John Woo action movies.
Tom Cruise got good hair acting in that movie, I'll say. Hair is flawless.
I think it's a lot more adrenaline paced than Mission Impossible 1 is as well.
Well, I mean, that first scene when he's like rock climbing, I'm stressing out.
So I'm not criticizing your choice, Sam. I'm just saying that I personally think that Mission Impossible 2 is better than 1. But then again, I'm sure we can all agree that 1 and 2 is better than 3.
I still gotta watch 3. I'm working my way through the Mission Impossible series.
I think 3 is the worst.
Oof.
I think so anyway.
For the rest of that year, there was also Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, I love that movie.
Oh, nice.
I love that movie.
Did well for DiCaprio and some of the other actors in there. Great year for Jamie Kennedy, who was in both Scream and Romeo and Juliet. There was also Fargo from that year.
Nice.
Happy Gilmore, which is probably the best Adam Sandler film I've seen, but I haven't seen Punch Drunk Love. You've also got Bottle Rocket, which I believe it might have been Wes Anderson's debut film. He might have released a film before that, I'm not too sure. Talking about debut films, Primal Fear as well.
Ooh, Ed Norton. Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, it couldn't have been a much better twist. I mean, personally, I saw it coming. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but it was a great film. I definitely recommend you watching it. There was also From Dusk Till Dawn that year.
Oh, great movie.
That had Tarantino in it.
Love that.
With more swearing than you could possibly put in a season of NBA. I'm not kidding when I say that as well. There's more swearing in that than actual English.
That's funny.
Yeah. Jerry Maguire, that was that year as well.
Oh yeah, hereby the memes Show Me the Money began.
Time to Kill, which is probably one of my favourite films from this year, actually.
Probably one of the most quite movies of the 90s, actually.
Yeah, well, when it comes to flops, I mean, there was a few comedies like The Naughty Professor that I'm not a huge fan of. But
don't even start on that front, John.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd say this, but I went to see Naughty Professor 2 with Clumps, and it's even worse.
Then the second one, arguably not as good. I love the first one. Eddie Murphy does such a phenomenal. Oh, he's brilliant.
It's like if someone ever went to me and went, "When is too much Eddie Murphy a bad thing?" I'd say, "Go and see Naughty Professor 2 and tell me that's a good thing."
I love that film for the wrong reasons. I'll not say it's a good film by any means. I'm just a huge Eddie Murphy fan, so I love it. But I can acknowledge that it's not a good film. The first one, though, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's enough for the 90s. So, do either of you two have any in the 2000s?
Yes.
You don't, Dean? You do, Joe?
Okay. I do. So I have 1 year in the 2000s. There's a couple amazing years, but I'm going to stick to one because I believe this one is so impactful. Obviously, the impact is still felt today from this year, and it's the year 2008. Because in the year 2008, we had Iron Man 1 come out. And as we all know, if not for Iron Man 1, if not for the success of Iron Man 1, if not for the brilliance of Robert Downey Jr. and, gosh, I can't oh, there we go. Jon Favreau, we would not have the MCU currently. We would not have had any MCU movie after Iron Man if it was a flop. And we all know the influence, the impact, the popularity that not only the MCU had, but on the impact of culture it had because of the MCU. Now being a nerd is cool. Not when I was a kid. I would get made fun of for reading comic books, but now it's cool. And you can attribute that to the success of Iron Man. Also, you had The Dark Knight, which Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker, one of the greatest of all time. The Dark Knight, one of Chris Nolan's best films, one of the best superhero films of all time. Also, 2008 had, I think, the last great parody movie to ever have come out, which I don't think gets enough recognition, Tropic Thunder.
I still haven't watched that, and I don't really want to watch it either.
Oh, I love that film. For those of you who have seen it, I'll never forget when I went to the movie theater to go watch that movie. I was confused. So, Dean, in the beginning, they show coming attractions for the actors in the film's movies.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, but they're not actual real movies. But as a kid, when I went to the theater, they were, you see the coming attractions. All of a sudden, I see Fatty's Fart 2. I see Scorcher 6. I see Satan's Alley. And I'm like, wait a second. I've never seen Scorcher 1. Why have I never heard about this? As a kid, I was so confused. I've never seen this. And then the movie actually started. But that's the last film where blackface is done by Robert Downey Jr., who, and it's funny, he was interviewed about it. He said, nope, I don't take it back. I'm proud of the work we did. Ben Stiller said the same thing. I stand by that as well. His performance in that, brilliant. Robert Downey Jr., that was one of his first actually comeback films as well. And it was because of his work and success on that film. I don't know if you guys know this, why he actually got the role in Iron Man, because up until then he wasn't castable. He just came out of rehab after his stint of copious amounts of cocaine. So he was uncastable. Ben Stiller was doing Tropic Thunder, cast Robert Downey Jr. And because of that, because of his reliability, his performance, his professionalism, he was approached also for Iron Man. And now we all know where that led. So yeah, that's why I say 2008, hands down, one of, if not the best year of films in the 2000s.
I'm going to reserve judgment, particularly when you hear what one of my years of the 2000s is. But yeah.
I'm assuming you mean the 2010s. Okay, well, if we're done with that, on to the 2010s. Dean, do you have any?
2.
You got 2. How many do you have, Joe?
The 2010s, it was funny. I kind of stopped in like the 2000s. So I can think for a second while Dean's talking about the 2010s.
So I've got 2 here. One is the year of, you probably won't be surprised when you hear it, but my first year is actually 2014. And I think Sam, given the Chris Nolan fan that year, will probably know what Chris Nolan film was released that year.
Well, I've actually got it wrote down. It's Interstellar.
It is, yeah. There was, just for a selection, there was Interstellar, Gone Girl, Hunger Games, Whiplash with Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons, John Wick, Grand Budapest Hotel, Guardians of the Galaxy, First Godzilla, First Kingsman, Edge of Tomorrow, Divergent, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, It Follows, one of the most, I always think, one of the best horror movies of the 2000s, if not one of the best of all time, simply because not only is it a horror where you will lose regardless of what it is, but it would literally put a generation off losing their virginity.
Wow.
I think you haven't seen it, Joe.
No.
Right, in short, basically, what it is, if you have sex with someone who's infected with whatever it is, then basically they and only they will see a figure in terms of a person. Doesn't matter if it's an old lady, a young boy. Basically, what happens is you are on a timer. Once this person catches up with you, you die.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So literally, this is what the young when all the parents run and say to their kids, "No, don't have sex, whatever you do." Cherry Falls would not really be, I would say, would be adequate. This probably would be.
Wow.
Yeah. Also that year, I will say I didn't really want to put it on this list, but it is one of Taylor Swift's first movies. It's called The Gift.
There we go.
Yeah. Maze Runner was here. American Sniper with Bradley Cooper was here. Imitation Game with Benedict Cumberbatch. What We Do in the Shadows. Ex Machina, which I think is probably one of the most underrated movies of that decade. Birdman, which I don't rate, but it's Oscar worthy, so it's got to be put on here. Amazing Spider-Man 2, Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal, Captain America Winter Soldier, which was my first and only midnight showing because I think I missed half of the movie. So
yes.
Never.
That, yep.
Scarlett Johansson's Lucy, Into the Woods with Anna Kendrick, just for one because there's so many in it. Big Hero 6, Hobbit Battle of the Five Armies, Expendable 3, not the best, but worthy to be on it anyway. The Other Woman, which you could also put in the flop section as well. I'll explain why in a bit. Lego Movie, reboot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. One of the producers' favorite movies, Best of Me. Chef with Jon Favreau, Fault in Our Stars with Shailene Woodley, Paddington, who doesn't love a cuddly bear, Theory of Everything with Eddie Redmayne and Felicity Jones, Need for Speed, which everyone says it's rubbish. I think it's great soundtrack. Plot isn't exactly what you would call groundbreaking, but I still love it anyway.
Remember, that was one of Aaron Paul's first projects outside of Breaking Bad.
Yeah. I will say the only thing about it, the dialect coach on that movie told Michael Keaton that you say cretin like cretins. Who the fuck says cretins? It's cretins. Every single time he says that, I say, it's cretins, you moron.
Well, you know what? We actually do say cretin.
Was it cretin, is it?
Oh, yeah, we don't say cretin. If we say cretin, I'd be like, no, it's cretin. Because obviously we English say it like cretin and it sounds a bit more. Even Richard Roxburgh, who's it sounds more proper when you say it like cretin. Yeah. Look at that cretin over there. It makes him sound nice.
Even Richard Roxburgh, who's Australian, said cretin in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Last few movies, Night at the Museum, Secret of the Tomb, How to Train Your Dragon 2, Bad Neighbours. What I think this is probably Robert Downey Jr.'s underestimated movie that he's ever done. It's The Judge with Robert Duvall in it. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you watch it just because Robert Downey Jr. is probably at his best, and this is probably the most like Tony Stark role he'll ever have. Wow. Flops for the year, there's so many in here. This is kind of what killed it for this year. Sex Tape with Cameron Diaz, Hercules with Dwayne Johnson, Sid 2, which was not as good as the original. The Interview with Seth Rogen and James Franco, or I stay the hell away from that. 22 Jump Street, which I'm not a fan of. Horrible Bosses 2, which was intolerable. Transcendence, which should have been a masterpiece considering Wally Professor, who was on a number of Chris Nolan movies as his cinematographer or director of photography. Didn't work out that well. A Most Violent Year, which is, I did actually say this when I reviewed it at the time. A Most Violent Year is probably the only movie where there's not really that much violence in it. Also, horror, in case everyone knows, obviously It Follows is horror, but I've already said that. The Babadook was released this year. One of the greatest movies of the 2010s as well. Annabelle was here, The Guest with Dan Stevens, which was one of the most pleasant surprises of that year for me. Deliver Us from Evil with Eric Bana and Edgar Ramirez. And the movie that should, in fact, I've created a new category for this. I call it a Flora, which is basically horror and flop at the same time. Dracula Untold, which should have been the start of Universal's monster cinematic universe, but it tanked.
So Dracula Untold should have stayed untold.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah, mate.
If I was a critic, that would be my headline.
Oh, mate, I wish I'd wrote that now. Go on in, Sam. That's that's the reason why 2014
What?
is one of the best, but it's not my best.
So you know what, Sam? In the small time I had time to think, and I do know one year that I could think on such a short notice. 2019, and I had a double check to make sure that this film also came out in 2019, and it did, and I'm so glad because it cemented that year as my favorite year. So two films came out that I absolutely loved. Well, actually three, but two take my top spot.
Avengers Endgame is one.
Thank you, Dean. Yep, Dean knows me
Because
so well.
2019 was my year as well.
Hey, look at that. And obviously, it's not just that Endgame is a phenomenal period to the end of the Infinity Saga, but the fact that it was such a satisfying ending, everybody loved it. It's not like Game of Thrones where you had most of the fan base arguing about it. It was such a gratifying, satisfying ending. You didn't need any more. You could walk away from the MCU after that saying, I enjoyed this 11-year ride.
Yep.
Not only that, but Joker came out.
Yeah.
And that was a film I was looking forward to for years. Excited to see what a Joker film, like what they can do. And I love it because it's a brilliant film first and a story about the Joker second.
Mm-hmm.
Like that film, from beginning to end, you're like just at the edge of your seat, feeling that something's going to happen. And it's just storytelling at its finest. Joaquin Phoenix deservingly won the Oscar next year.
Yeah.
And I literally said there's no better person that deserves it than this man. Mm-hmm. Another film that came out that I loved is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I'll be honest, the first time I didn't enjoy it as much, but it was kind of like The Big Lebowski where for some reason I couldn't get it out of my mind. So when I saw it again, I was able to appreciate it a lot more.
Yeah.
But honestly, just for Joker and Endgame alone, you have to say 2019 is one of the greatest films for cinema.
Yeah. Those were actually on my list as well. Which I actually know a little bit of an interesting fact about me and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
What was that?
You want to know an interesting fact about that movie and myself?
I love interesting facts.
That was the movie where I gave up movie reviewing and started to do interviews instead.
Really? Wow.
I literally went to see it and I literally did not have one thing to say about it. It was literally like, right, how am I going to put this into review? And it must have been 2 hours I went and I was just like, do you know what? I haven't even thought of anything to say about this movie.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, there's actually, I know Joe's only mentioned a few, but there is actually a lot more in it. Sam, I believe you reviewed this movie recently, Parasite.
Yes, I did, because incidentally, I put 2014 and 2019 down.
Hey!
Yeah.
Oh, Joe, if only you put 2019, mate, that would have been all three of us.
Look at that. We finally all agreed on a year. That's what I'm talking about.
Captain Marvel was also released this year. Parasite was released, Joker. 1917. With Mark Strong. Yeah.
So good.
Doctor Sleep with Ewan McGregor, which was the sequel to The Shining, and obviously Rebecca Ferguson was in it as well. Fisherman's Friends, which is, I'm not sure if it's a favourite of the producer or not, but she does kind of like it a lot more than I do. The big one for me, or one of the big ones for me, Knives Out.
Definitely better than its sequel.
A good mystery film. I love that movie.
I love that. But yeah, and it's also the only movie where you will literally have Captain America acting like an asshole.
Yeah, so good.
For me, that was a case of, right, I love this movie regardless of this shit or not. Because I swear to God, his only words for about 3 minutes once was just eat shit. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else. Irishman was released this year. I'm not a big fan of it, but obviously it's Scorsese, so regardless of whether you like it or not, you have to put it in a reason why 2019 was a good year. Jojo Rabbit, Godzilla King of the Monsters was in this year. Le Mans 66 as well.
Nice.
Yep. John Wick 3, which I still think is the best of the quadrilogy thus far. Lighthouse with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, which probably got him the Batman role, by the way. Because that was the sort of role that he did, because everyone just knew him as Twilight. So we started doing, I'll say, darker roles like that. And what was that name of that movie he did? Something like that's it, Cosmopolis or something like that.
Cosmopolis?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. Triple Frontier with Ben Affleck, Pedro Pascal, I think it was Pedro Pascal, Jeremy Renner, but there's acting heavyweights in that. I've seen it, absolutely love it. Code 8 with the Amell cousins in it, Robbie and Stephen. Not really the greatest sequel, but it is in there just for purposes. It Chapter 2. Anna, which is basically like a grown-up version of Hannah, obviously. Spider-Man Far From Home, Aladdin reboot, which is probably the only reboot I actually have positive things to say about. Alita, Battle Angel, Last Christmas with Emilia Clarke, Jumanji 2, the original Shazam, which sort of got everyone thinking that maybe DC movies aren't as bad as we thought they were. Hobbs and Shaw, Fast and Furious spin-off. Toy Story 4, 600 Grand with Ryan Reynolds, Polo with Mads Mikkelsen, which I've watched and I absolutely love it. Frozen. Hold on, is it Frozen? I'm trying to think. No, it's not Frozen. Is it Frozen? Well, it's on here, so I'm going to say Frozen. Downton Abbey movie. Ad Astra with Brad Pitt. Yesterday with Lily James, which is the producer.
That was a fun movie yesterday. I watched it. Like, by no means my favorite, but I just had a good time watching that film.
I tell you what I consider one of the best movies of that year, and it was really underappreciated. Booksmart, which was Olivia Wilde's first directing role.
Oh wow!
It's actually got Jonah Hill's little sister in it. I think her name's Jordan Feldstein or something like that. But yeah, great movie.
I didn't know that Jonah's sister started acting.
Neither did I. I didn't even know he had a sister until I saw that. Glass with Bruce Willis and Sam Jackson. Bombshell with Margot Robbie and Charlize Theron. Rocket Man with Taron Egerton. Noelle with Anna Kendrick. Hustlers with J-Lo and Constance Wu. And Zac Efron, I believe, in Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil and Vile. By the way, gentlemen, don't think any more of me with all the flops I'm about to say. Terminator Dark Fate.
Oh yeah, that came out that year too.
I will say this, it's a good movie, but when you have the word Terminator in it, if it's not as good as T2, then it's failed.
And sadly, after T2 was not as good as T2.
Star Wars Episode 7, which I consider a flop, because nobody really wants to talk about 7, 8, and 9 when we have 4, 5, and 6.
They don't exist. What are you talking about, 7, 8, 9? I don't know what you're talking
about. Yeah. Lion King live action, which I didn't rate.
It was horrible. I mean, just not horrible, it just didn't have to exist.
Yeah, exactly. Cats, which flopped on many levels, although I'm going to say...
You know what's actually funny about Cats is one of the first films that actually had like an update while it was in the theater because some of the effects weren't done. So after the first, it had like, you know, like video games, it'll come out and then they'll have an update, like an upgrade or an update. Cats had that, which I found hilarious.
I still say the only shining light on that was Taylor Swift.
Of course.
I'm not just saying that because she was in it, but I generally thought she was probably the best out of everyone and probably the one that I didn't actually leave the cinema thinking, well, that was really enjoyable, wasn't it? Oh, yeah, Taylor actually made it a little bit worthwhile. X-Men Dark Phoenix, which I still think they could have done a better job, but I do really like Sophie Turner as Jean Grey. Men in Black International, because there's no Will Smith or Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah, which I can't believe that they thought that was a good idea.
Yeah. Hellboy, that's not the Hellboy movie we wanted. I love Ian McShane's Pieces, but no. Gemini Man, which had promise, but the fact it was in developmental hell for years means it probably shouldn't have been made. Charlie's Angels, which, as much as I love Naomi Scott, Ella Balinska, and who was the other one? Kristen Stewart. They're no Drew Barrymore, Cameron Diaz, and Lucy Liu. I'm going to say Murder Mystery. It's an Adam Sandler movie. What do you expect? And Rambo Last Blood with Sly Stallone, which should never have been made.
No, but I'm a big fan of Sly, so I'm like, good for him.
But I have actually said, if Jean Grey was being done again for the X-Men for MCU, and Sophie Turner did say she wanted to play her again, I would happily endorse that.
Me too. Absolutely. She did phenomenal.
Yeah, she did phenomenal with basically as the movies went on, they got shitter, and she just was so brilliant. So that's me done, boys. Aside from my actual year of movies that I think is the greatest.
Well, I've got one more from the 2010s. And do you have any movies after that, Joe?
I don't know.
Okay, so I'll go through mine from the 2010s, which is actually 2010. Just had a sheer amount of brilliant films. Obviously, there was a Christopher Nolan film that year, Dean.
2010. Hold on. Dark Knight was 2010. Was it The Prestige by any chance?
No,
was
no,
not.
it came out in 2006.
Oh, hold on. Oh, yeah, because this Prestige was the first one after Batman Begins. Hold on. Oh, I should know this. I believe it was Inception, wasn't it?
It was Inception, yes.
And to be honest with you, I did actually think about 2010 when I saw Inception because I was like, right.
I mean, Inception's phenomenal. It's so good.
But to be honest with you, when I was looking through it and I thought, compared to obviously all the movies I've already listed off, I was like, I do love that, but there's just so many great movies in the other years I've already seen.
Yeah.
Well, I mostly chose 2010 because it had so many incredible films. Not the fact it's just like a good year, but it also had Black Swan that year, which personal favorite of mine.
That was another one I actually looked at and thought, yeah, this has potential.
Yeah, it also had The Social Network, obviously with Andrew Garfield and Jesse Eisenberg. Brilliant film. Don't think you can really knock it. I mean, for Jesse Eisenberg being I'd say a likable actor, he was an absolute prick in that film.
He was.
He was a phenomenal prick. Played it very well.
I like it when he said, I'm involved in 3 different lawsuits, so you'll have to jog my memory a little bit.
Yeah, he's absolute douche. But then again, that's why he's hired. That year, you've also got Martin Scorsese's Shutter Island.
Oh, great, yeah.
Brilliant twist. I mean, I'm assuming you didn't have it ruined, unlike me.
Do you want to know something, Sam? I actually had the vision of Michelle Williams being nice, shattered by that movie.
Oh, wow. What other things have we got now for this year? How to Train Your Dragon, good childhood favourite. 127 Hours. I mean, I'm a fan of biopics, and wow, quite gnarly for the film. You just got another biopic, The King's Speech.
Oh yeah, that was another thing.
Yeah, I believe it won an Oscar. I'm trying to think which one.
I think it won a lot of Oscars. I think didn't Colin Firth win Best Actor for it?
Yeah, I'm assuming Colin Firth did win Best Actor. That seems like something to get. Also, The Fighter. I believe that was when Christian Bale won an Oscar.
It was, yes.
He did. The Fighter is so good. I actually got done watching that again recently.
We've also got Four Lions in this year, which is a British comedy. I don't know if you're fully aware of it, Joe, but
I'm not.
What's it called?
Definitely watch it. Four Lions.
The name sounds familiar, but I can't put a plot to it.
You may have seen a specific scene from it where they're singing in a van. Trying to think what song it was. Dancing in the Moonlight. You might have seen that scene from it.
No, I haven't, mate.
Brilliant film overall. That year also had Under the Red Hood.
Oh, yeah.
A good one. Yeah, I think that's actually one of the films that started DC's successful string of animated features like that are coming out rapidly.
What else? Submarine was also brought out that year. I haven't seen it myself, but I've only heard good things about it. However, there is some shitters, which kind of brought it down a bit. You've got the remake of The Karate Kid.
Oh, God, no.
You've also got The Last Airbender. Which
That's Farbender, it should have been called.
Yeah. So it's got quite a range of quality in its movies. But overall, it was in my top 3. All of the films that I put down from the 2010s were in my top 3. Probably biased because it's my generation. I've grown up with these films.
Yeah, fair enough. I would probably say the same thing about my choice, mate.
Yeah. But I'm assuming now's the perfect time to move on to the year that you think's better than all of ours.
I do have one request. Can I do mine last? Because I'm pretty sure I can win this argument in about 10 movies.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with mine first, seeing as you want to go last. I had 2014 down as mine.
Which was one of mine as well. And I did contemplate that.
Yeah, I think it's the sheer output of brilliant films in that year.
So good.
Like negating all of your absolute shitters. I mean,
I've actually so I've done half of his job for him.
Yeah, but it had some of the best kids' films going. Had the Lego Movie, Big Hero 6, Paddington. It's obviously growing up with them. Probably three of the best kids' films there is out there, all in the space of 1 year. Also had some great action films with obviously the start of the John Wick franchise and the Kingsman franchise. Some brilliant MCU films in there. Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which we spoke about. It's probably my favorite standalone of the Marvel projects that there is. Quite, adultish, you could say, for the MCU at the time. It's also got Whiplash, something I regard as probably a top 3 film. Interstellar, which we touched on as well. I just, if it wasn't for, the quite bad films in that year, I think it would have just took the crown, guaranteed. So, are you going to go with yours now, Joe?
So we're doing best year of all time.
Yep.
Yeah, what we class as the greatest year of all time. He's not sure now because we've just said that, and he's put his head instantly down and he's thinking, have I made the right choice?
I am, because this is so hard. I'm basing mine off of, again, what came after that and looking at what happened before and what happened after. I'm sorry, this is so tough. I'm just going to go with my original choice, 1941, because of one film, and everybody knows it, Citizen Kane. Because if not for Citizen Kane created how we film films today. You look at movies made before Citizen Kane, you look at movies made after Citizen Kane. Orson Welles not only raised the bar, but he created what is now the standard for a feature film. Because I went to film school. I remember I was tortured watching films before Citizen Kane. And Citizen Kane was the first film I watched because we were advancing through the years. I was like, wow, I like this film. And then you see the acting is so modern. The directing is modern. The editing is flawless. You're thinking, this is 1941. Then you see all the films that came out after Casablanca, which was released a year after that. The impact of Citizen Kane is still felt to this day. Without Citizen Kane, you wouldn't have I'll Work My Way Up, On the Waterfront. You wouldn't have had Birdman of Alcatraz. You wouldn't have The Godfather. You wouldn't have Rocky. You wouldn't have like all these films that came after. You can all look back and see it all started from Citizen Kane. So that's why I'm going to say 1941. And I'm sticking to that.
All right, fair enough then. So I have genuinely. Sorry, Sam. I was going to say this. I just want to get this out of the way because I must admit I'm feeling quite anxious about this now. Right, so I have basically said throughout this topic that I only need to say about 10 movies for me to win this argument. I genuinely believe, judging by the amount of quality in this year, that regardless, I know Joe's basically said one reason only, and that's Citizen Kane, which is understandable and respectable. But if I say 10 movies at least, I bet you I can win this argument. So I'm going to start now.
Okay.
The year is 1991.
Ooh.
Yeah. Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
I was already going to say Terminator 2, top of the list.
Silence of the Lambs. Hook. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Robert De Niro and Cape Fear. Point Break with Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves. Addams Family. Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. Not so much JFK, but JFK's on that year. Backdraft, Thelma and Louise, Father of a Bride, City Slickers. Those are the main ones. But seriously, boys, I'm just going to ask you this one question now. Can you seriously look me in the eyes and tell me that that is not the best year for movies just from those titles alone?
Honestly, I'm like, damn, that's you make a good argument, man. You make a great argument.
And do you want to know something? Compiling all the list, 1991 actually had second worst movies as far as actual movies go. Because it
Wow.
went 82, 91, 93 had probably one of the most. I think 2014 had the most amount of movies. But as far as like sheer quality, 1991 for me is just a winner. Even when I was looking over this list, I was like, right, so we've had all these movies in this year. Has there been anything else in any of those other years that basically go to me and say, I cannot say that this was better than 1991? 93 had a lot. Obviously, you had Jurassic Park. There was a lot of good quality after that. Demolition Man, I still think, is one of the best sci-fi movies ever, even though a lot of people probably don't. But at the same time, how can you argue with T2, Silence of the Lambs, Hook, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Cape Fear? I would really like to know if there is somebody who doesn't agree with that list. That person would have to explain to me why he doesn't agree with me. But in fairness, chaps, do you genuinely think I've won that argument just off those movies alone?
I mean, you named some of the best films to have ever come out of all time.
Yeah.
And it's tough because when you consider the greatest of all time, it's because like everybody puts their own selfish considerations into it. It's so hard to objectively say this is the greatest of all time because of this. Like based on your argument, I can't argue with that, you know?
So going to Mr. Critic, what do you think?
I mean, that's possibly one of the worst years for horror films.
Yeah, I must admit, there is actually Child's Play 3, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, recently. And also, I must admit, some of the flowers on here are Highlander 2, The Quickening, and Hulk Hogan Suburban Commando. I know they're not really horrors, but looking back on how I actually thought they were good at the time, I actually feel quite sick in my own body. But regardless of whether you like them or not, there's just too much quality in those movies I listed. And that's before we even get to Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, Hot Shots, which I think was the first movie that ever did like a spoof of all the action genre. Naked Gun 2.5, even though Naked Gun is not the best franchise of all, I still think that was the best movie of that shitty franchise. So honestly, chaps, I genuinely don't know if there is a better movie year, but it's going to take a hell of more of an argument than what I just gave to say to me, like, you're right, I'm not.
Yeah, you make really good arguments.
So go on in, Mr. Critic. What do you think?
Well, what I'm going to do after this session is I'm going to put out a poll as such onto my Instagram, see what other people think's the best year for films is, to see how close, other people's brains work to ours. Because I can see why people would put 91.
I might actually do that on mine as well.
Yeah, I can see why people would put 2014. Could also see 41, I believe you said. So it'll be good to see what other people think as well. But
technically, you haven't answered the question, mate.
I think what we've all done is we've thought of different things, which is why I need to explain as well. We all prioritize something over another. Yours is the highest of high quality, mine's the mass output, and Joe's is the soul, the movie that's defined the entirety of movies after that. So it's based off of what you think in terms of, either mass of the good, the quality of the good, or, just one singular movie. So I can see why you've gone with that, but I can't agree with you personally.
Fair enough. But like I said, I just generally can't think of any other year in movie where you've had movies of that quality. I mean, no offense, Cape Fear was basically the one movie that made me shit scared of Robert De Niro. I think even my sister was shit scared the first time she saw that, and she doesn't get scared by anything. Yeah, if you, I'll tell you what we can do. We can do that, but obviously not after this goes up, because once this goes up, then we can obviously then we can obviously do a poll. I will inform the producer that's how it's going to go down. So at the moment, gentlemen, not to sound egotistical like I probably am sounding, would we say that as a group, as a collective of the three of us, we have agreed that 1991 is the best year. I say collectively because obviously it's 2-1. I've always been like this. Democracy is key. Highest number always wins. The producer will tell you this. This is how our podcast has always operated.
I'd be more likely to go with 41 than 91 personally.
Ooh,
My heart.
I've not seen many of those films in 91.
Oh,
all right. Sorry, Dean. In accordance with the laws that you've given us, I think 41.
Yes, I would happily accept that. I'm anything if not negotiable. But just remember, Joe, you effectively did not have an argument.
I didn't, except for just based on because again, what we're talking about, what I considered, I'm losing my thoughts for a second.
It's kind of a bit of both. Obviously, you couldn't think of anything. I'll say because you actually physically said that you can't argue with it. But I will happily submit to the fact that you chose 1941 and Sam's agreed with you. So,
all right,
I'll actually submit to that.
Wow. No,
I mean, wow.
I'll still prefer Martin.
I know you do. I know you
next best.
But I think technically, haven't we all agreed on something?
I think we did. Yeah.
I know it wasn't Joe's original because he didn't think about it, but we did sort of all agree 2019 was.
I was going to say, I think it was 2019. Yeah.
So which verdict do you want to do, 2019 or 1941?
Probably 19 because we've all collectively said that's in our top 5.
I think because we all conferred on 19, we can all agree on 2019.
I'll tell you what. Directed by Dean podcast official choice for best movie years 2019 with 1991 and 1941 in a close second. So
feels like missing another movie there, Dean. Another year. Yeah.
Which was the other year? Remind me.
2014.
Oh yeah, 2014 is in 2014. Honestly, we've just said so many different years. I must admit, I've been struggling to keep up with everything. But like Sam said, once this goes up, which hopefully will be the 21st, hopefully everyone who answers the poll will actually have. I'm actually curious as to what the results were going to be because I bet there'll be ones that we've probably considered, but we thought maybe not.
I actually have a lot of faith with them choosing 2019.
Either way, mate.
We'll see. Yeah, I'm excited.
We will find out, and we'll talk about the things of it afterwards. Hopefully, you've had a bit of fun with this, ladies and gentlemen, because I know I have. This has actually been the most fun I've had on a podcast for a while.
It was fun, but it was also a little stressful for me.
Yeah, I must admit, I did actually think I would win that argument, and I actually didn't. But I
love the confidence, though, Dean. Can't argue with the confidence.
Yeah, it's just a case of, from my perspective, I just could not think of any other year of movies where you had so many great movies in one year.
That's true.
But either way, I don't know what the next topic Sam's going to pick, but I'm actually looking forward to seeing what it is.
Well, hopefully it'll be something that's not going to take 2 hours long.
Oh, no, those are the best ones, mate. Those are
very engaging.
I'll make it longer next time. So.
I don't know how that's going to be unless we might say that dad jokes would be over quite quickly, actually.
I got some.
Not to lie or anything, but the producer bought me a book of dad jokes a while ago. Me and Sam are actually quite regulars of Mad TV, so we know a few as well from there. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you've enjoyed our engaging debates, and I know there will be some that agree with us, some won't, some will have their own years. But either way, it's nice to have a healthy difference of opinion. So with that being said, you can find me social-wise on Directed by Dean Podcast on Instagram and Directed by Dean Podcast on YouTube. I will be uploading some more F1 updates soon. Oh, by the way, I forgot something in the news, but I'll say what it is next week because just ran out of time, boys. So with that being said, who's going next?
You can find me if you need to on Instagram at Joe J Barra. Feel free to always reach out and follow my blessed journey of life.
And if you're trying to find me, my is Max Murdoch. You can find me on TikTok, Insta, pretty much any social media platform. If I'm on it, that will be my username. If you want to request any films, just DM me. I'm free to talk.
Speaking of movies, what's on the docket this week, Samwise?
As in what's to come.
Yep. Give us a nice preview of it.
Well, not necessarily this next week. However, when December hits, I am planning to do a Christmas film every single day throughout December. And it's going to end it's not going to, end on the 25th. But the best Christmas film of all time is going to be on the 25th. So,
25 Days of Christmas Film with Sam. I love it.
The question I have for you is, how many of those are Hallmark movies? How many of those are Hallmark movies?
Well, I've actually let my viewers choose the films, so it's not on me.
Okay.
I did some Hallmark movies there. Then, in fairness, I will say this: the producer actually had a subscription to Hallmark recently, and I've literally gone on Amazon Prime, and when it goes to when you click on Hallmark, it's mainly Christmas movies. So,
well, of course, I still think, and this can be a topic for later, I think I'm going to go with Home Alone. It's one of the greatest Christmas films, just because Home Alone.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you guys want to do a best Christmas movie in December, I'm happy for that.
I think we should. 'Tis the season, they say.
And then we could all agree on the fact that Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
Oh, it is, 100%.
Yeah.
That's one thing we've all agreed on tonight, aside from 2019.
Die Hard's one of the best Christmas films ever. It's going to be on my list.
Yeah. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this has probably been the best and the most fun episode I've had for a while. So from the critic, from the actor, and the interviewer, and the producer as well, who works tirelessly to get this stuff made. And obviously, thank you all so much for listening week in, week out. Enjoy your week, and we will see you next week.
Thank you, everybody. See you next week. God bless.